Trapped with the Billionaire in Bali Part 4. Chapter 18, The Truth Comes Out. The Mediterranean sun beat down on the yacht's top deck like it was trying to burn Leo Van Holst clean. He sat in his private lounge, half asleep in a leather chair, a half-drunk glass of something expensive on the table beside him, untouched. 3 weeks since Bali. 12 parties. 4 tabloid covers. 1 shredded heart. And beneath it all, the steady, gnawing ache of a name he couldn't say out loud without tasting regret. Isabella. He hadn't called. Hadn't emailed. Hadn't tried. Because if she had betrayed him, he didn't want to know what it felt like to still be in love with someone who never meant a word. Until Lucien called. Again. This time, he didn't ignore it. What? Leo muttered, voice cracked from a night of shouting over champagne-soaked DJ sets. Lucien's voice on the other end wasn't clipped, it was urgent. Sharp. Controlled only by necessity. You need to listen to me. All of it. Leo sat up. What is it? I've been digging into the files Astrid released. The ones that proved Isabella wrote her manuscript early. I know what they are. No, Lucien said. You don't. Because they're fake. Leo's heart paused. What? They're doctored. Time-stamped using an internal emulator that matches one Astrid's PR firm has used before, for NDA contracts, no less. That's impossible. Leo. It's not just metadata. I found duplicates of the real draft Isabella submitted to her editor. The original. Clean. No references to you, your company, or Echo Protocol. That version predates the screenshots Astrid released. Leo stood now. Cold spreading through his bloodstream. She forged it. Yes. To ruin her. To ruin you. Why? Lucien hesitated. Because she knew what you were about to do before you did. She saw the way you looked at Isabella. She saw you change. And she wasn't done controlling the narrative. Leo sat down, hard. The glass fell and shattered at his feet. She never betrayed me. I did. Flashback, his voice in Bali, you turned me into a story before you even met me. Her voice, broken, you're angry because you want to trust me. He hadn't trusted her. He'd banished her. He'd left her to be crucified by the media while he partied with sharks. And now? He was the villain in her story. He found her manuscript. Lucien emailed it over. Leo read every page. Line by line. He wasn't a man. He was a system. Designed to protect himself from failure. From love. From anyone who might dare to look at him like he deserved more than brilliance. But she looked anyway. By the end of the final page, Leo was crying. No rage. No yelling. Just quiet, wrecked understanding. She hadn't just seen him. She'd believed in him. Even when he'd pushed her away. Even when it cost her everything. And now, she was gone. Leo walked off the yacht in linen and sunglasses, past a dozen cameras, past an influencer asking for a selfie, and straight into his waiting black SUV. He leaned forward to the driver. Paris. Immediately. Yes, sir. Because if he wanted to undo what he'd done, he'd have to move fast. Isabella had lost her career. Her reputation. But he still had one thing left, the truth. And this time, he was going to tell it to the entire world. Chapter 19, Desperate Measures. Leo didn't wait for clearance. Didn't alert the board. Didn't ask Lucian. Didn't even pack. He just booked the jet. The same one that had taken him into exile. Now it was taking him back into the fire. He sat in the leather seat of his private aircraft, sleepless, heart racing, fingers scrolling endlessly through articles, social media, and every headline that had Isabella's name attached. Manipulative muse. Billionaire's ex-girlfriend ghosts the spotlight. Where is Isabella Walker now? She was everywhere, and yet, no one knew where she was. Until one message changed everything. The flight landed in New York at sunrise. He didn't stop to enjoy it. He went straight to her apartment, the one address Lucian still had on file from the contest paperwork. The one that had once been filled with books, coffee mugs, and her laugh. Now, it was empty. Boxes stacked in corners. Bookshelves cleared. Only the echo of a life she had abandoned. His heart dropped into his stomach. He was too late. He stepped out into the hallway, breath shallow, not ready to accept it, when a voice called from behind him. Looking for Isabella. He turned. A woman stood by the elevator in a cozy cardigan, holding a stack of recycled mail. Sharp-eyed. Clever smiled. I'm her friend. And her emergency contact, apparently, she said. Let me guess, you're the reason she bought a last-minute ticket across the world. Leo stepped toward her. Please. I need to see her. The friend narrowed her eyes. You've got some nerve showing up now, Van Holst. I know I was wrong. I know what Astrid did. I know Isabella didn't deserve any of it. No, she didn't. Then tell me where she is. A pause. Then the friend softened. Just slightly. She left 3 days ago. Where? Bali. She went back. Said she needed to finish the book, the friend replied. The real book. Said the only place it ever made sense was there. Leo swallowed. His hands trembled. Do you know where she's staying? The friend handed him a folded note. A scribbled address. A name. The Indrani Hideaway. Villa 9. Back where it all began. She didn't say much else, the friend added, stepping into the elevator. Just that she wasn't waiting for anyone to save her. The doors slid shut. Leo booked the next flight to Bali. No luxury. No yacht. No entourage. Just him, a duffel bag, and a burning truth that weighed heavier than his guilt. He didn't care if she screamed. If she slammed the door in his face. If she never forgave him. He was going to find her. And this time. He wasn't leaving without fighting for the ending she deserved. Isabella sat on the villa's open-air veranda, typing under the shade of a frangipani tree. The sea shimmered below. The jungle pulsed around her. And on her screen. He had broken her heart with precision. But she had survived. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she finally loved herself more. She paused. Closed her eyes. Breathed. And didn't notice the jet slicing through the clouds far above her. But it was coming. And so was he. Chapter 20, Back to Bali. The wheels of the jet touched down on the tarmac with a soft whine, just as dawn broke over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the Balinese jungle, the ocean below breathing in long, blue waves. Leo Van Holst had returned. But this time, not to hide. Not to escape. He had come back to rebuild. No press. No cameras. Just purpose. He stepped off the plane in fitted linen, no suit jacket, no assistant trailing behind. Lucian had offered to come. Leo had refused. If I want her to believe me, he'd said, I have to show up as a man, not a machine. The air hit him immediately, thick, fragrant, the scent of orchids and unfinished business. He pulled his sunglasses down, eyes scanning the horizon. And then he said the words that would change everything. Book the entire Indrani hideaway. Every suite. Every villa. Today. The concierge on the other end stammered. Sir, we have other guests. Then cancel them. I'll pay whatever penalty. Triple their rates if necessary. And what should we list the reservation under, Mr. Van Holst? He smiled. Isabella. The resort staff was quietly buzzing. The world's most infamous tech mogul had returned to the site of his emotional collapse, but this time, with roses instead of rage. Leo had moved into Villa 10, directly next to the one she was staying in. Close, but not intruding. He refused to knock. Not yet. She deserved space. Choice. She'd been denied too many things. She wouldn't be denied power now. Instead, he planned. He had the villa's private chef prepare all her favorite meals, from memory. He requested jasmine candles placed around her reading pavilion. He even had the koi pond restored, stocked with fish that mirrored the ones from their first awkward breakfast. And then, the boldest move of all, he had his team courier an embossed, hand-stitched copy of her original manuscript back to Bali. He had it bound in soft leather, gold-foiled with the title. The Cipher by Isabella Walker. It was delivered to her patio table at sunrise, with a single orchid laid across the cover. And beneath the title page, a single handwritten note. You didn't write a story. You wrote the truth I was too afraid to speak. Let me be brave for you now. L. Isabella opened the package with trembling fingers. The leather smelled like new beginnings. She ran her hand over the title. Tears filled her eyes. And when she turned the page, and saw Leo's note, she dropped into the chair beside her and covered her mouth. Because this wasn't performative. This wasn't calculated. This was him, handing her his heart with open palms and no armor. And for the first time since that day he'd sent her away, she didn't feel alone. She stepped out onto her private deck. Leo was already there, waiting in the soft blue twilight, hands in his pockets, back to her. She didn't say a word. But he turned anyway, as if he felt her. Their eyes met. And there, between jungle and ocean, silence and apology, love and fear, they stood. No one moved. Not yet. Because what came next had to be everything. Chapter 21, The Grand Gesture. By sunrise the next morning, the jungle near Villa 9 buzzed, not with insects or birdsong, but with quiet construction. Carpenters, electricians, florists, and printers moved like shadows through the trees. Local artisans stitched fabric, laid bamboo, and hung lanterns with hands that moved like poetry. A covered path of stepping stones was laid one by one, curling through the foliage like a secret. Leo supervised everything. Barefoot. Calm. Completely focused. This wasn't a stunt. It wasn't about money. This was an apology that could be walked through. By early afternoon, it was finished. And it was perfect. Tucked in a clearing just beyond the villas, hidden behind a curtain of palm trees and wisteria vines, stood a writing studio unlike anything in the world. The outer structure was handcrafted from reclaimed Balinese teak, polished to a warm golden hue. Slanted windows lined the walls, letting in filtered jungle light. Paper lanterns hung like stars from the high ceiling. A veranda overlooked a quiet koi pond. A white hammock swayed gently beneath flowering frangipani. Inside, a single carved desk. A vintage typewriter. A leather chair with hand-stitched ivy thread. And on every available surface, her words. Printed pages. Dozens of them. From the cipher. Each one pressed and gold-leafed at the top. Bound in soft velvet books. Rolled into scrolls wrapped in silk. Hung like banners from the beams above. Quotes she didn't even remember writing surrounded the space. He was chaos, but not without compass. She didn't want to save him. She just wanted to stand still with him, for one moment, without fear. Leo had selected every passage himself. She found it at sunset. He didn't tell her. He didn't lead her. She simply saw the stone path where there hadn't been one before, and followed it. It felt like a dream. The lanterns. The wood. The scent of frangipani. The creak of the studio door when she pushed it open. And when she stepped inside, she stopped breathing. Her name was everywhere. Her voice. Her truth. Her heart. Held, honored, amplified. You built this, she whispered, spinning slowly in the center of the room. Behind her, Leo. Leaning quietly against the doorway. Hands in his pockets. Eyes full of something dangerous and soft. I read your book 5 times, he said. Each time, I found a version of myself I wanted to be. She turned. You did this for me. He nodded. You created something from pain. I just wanted to give it back in light. A pause. Then, almost broken. You believed in me when no one else did. Even me. She looked around again, blinking back tears. This is everything I've ever wanted. He stepped forward. Not close enough to touch her. Just close enough to be near. Then stay. A beat. Stay and finish your book. Stay and start a new one. Stay and let me try to be worthy of the ending you deserve. Silence. Long. Deep. Full. She walked to the desk. Ran her fingers over the edge. Then turned to him, voice shaking. This is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever done for me. He opened his mouth to speak. But she crossed the room and kissed him. Not like Bali. Not like the storm. Not like Saint Tropez's regret. This was something else. This was home. Chapter 22, Isabella's Breakdown. The writing studio was perfect. The man who built it, impossibly kind. And for the first time in her life, Isabella Walker had everything she'd ever dreamed of. So why did she feel like she was about to shatter? It started in the small ways. She couldn't sleep. Not even in the gorgeous villa bed, surrounded by ocean breezes and the sound of waves kissing the shore. Leo had offered to stay the night, but only if she wanted. He said it with reverence, not assumption. She kissed him goodnight. Then lay awake for hours. Listening. Waiting. Worrying. The next day, she stared at her manuscript for hours. The words were there. The plot. The message. But suddenly she questioned all of it. Who am I to write this? What if it's not enough? What if he changes his mind again? She looked at the studio he built, every single detail tailored to her dreams. And all she could feel was panic. Leo noticed. He tried not to push. But by mid-afternoon, he found her standing in the middle of the writing studio, clutching a half-filled journal, her face pale and her shoulders trembling. Isabella. She didn't answer. She just kept staring at a quote he'd hung above the door. She was the author of her own salvation. Then, her breath caught. And she dropped the notebook. The breakdown was quiet. At first. One tear. Then another. And then, like something inside her cracked open, she sank to the floor. I can't do this, she whispered. Leo rushed to her side. Dropped to his knees. What's wrong? I'm scared. Of what? Of everything. Of this. Of you. Of me not being enough. He reached for her hands, but she pulled away. You say you see me, she said, voice shaking, but I don't know how to be seen. Not without being exposed. Or ruined. Or left. He was silent. She stood suddenly, pacing now. What happens when the studio isn't enough? When the pages dry up? When I wake up and you realize I'm not the fantasy you remembered? Isabella, you left once already, Leo. His chest rose. Fell. You kicked me out. You believed her instead of me. What if that happens again? What if next time, you don't come back? Her voice broke on the last word. And then she crumpled into the chair by the window, pressing the heels of her palms into her eyes. I don't know how to be in something good, she whispered. I've only ever written it. I've never lived it. He moved carefully. Quietly. Gently. Kneeling beside her again, this time with no rush to speak, just presence. And when he finally did speak, it was with all the steadiness she'd once accused him of not having. I'm scared too. She looked at him. Of what? Of getting it wrong again. Of screwing this up. Of hurting you when I'm trying to protect you. Of failing at love because I never learned how to stay. A beat. But the difference is, I'm not running from that fear anymore. I'm standing in it. With you. He reached for her hand again. This time, she let him. You don't have to be perfect to be loved, he said. You just have to stay. Stay when it's hard. Stay when you're afraid. Stay when the pages dry up. She blinked, tears falling silently. And if I fall apart again, she whispered. He smiled, brushing his thumb across her cheek. Then I'll sit with you in the mess. And we'll write the next chapter together. She leaned into him. Slowly. Finally. Head on his shoulder. Hands clasped tightly around his. And for the first time since everything broke, she let herself believe that maybe, she was allowed to be loved after all. Chapter 23, The Public Apology. Ubud, Bali. 3 days later. The Ubud Literary Symposium was in full swing. Authors, critics, bloggers, Instagram poets. Everyone with a tote bag and a manuscript was gathered under a soaring tent at the Sacred Monkey Forest Cultural Center, sipping coconut water and dissecting prose. And on the center panel stage, sitting in front of a mural of gilded typewriters and palm leaves, Isabella Walker. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her name hadn't been on the original schedule. But a last-minute invite had come from an indie literary press when one of their panelists dropped out. They said her story was controversial, relevant, and very click-worthy. She almost didn't accept. But Leo had said, "Tell your story. The real one. I'll be there when it matters." She didn't know what that meant. Until now. The panel moderator cleared her throat. "Next question for Miss Walker. What would you say to those who accused the cipher of being exploitative, even manipulative?" The crowd stirred. Phones lifted. Eyes sharpened. Isabella took a breath. Sat taller. Smiled, just barely. "I'd say stories don't manipulate people. People do. Stories reveal." "Reveal what?" the moderator asked. "The parts of ourselves we'd rather deny," Isabella said. "The people who hurt us. And the ones who loved us when we weren't sure we deserved it." She wasn't crying. But she wasn't far from it. "I didn't write a scandal. I wrote a confession. And it turns out, the truth doesn't always fit neatly into a headline." The audience was quiet now. Really listening. And then, a sudden commotion at the back of the tent. Chairs scraping. Gasps. A ripple of whispers. "Is that? Oh my God. It's him." The moderator's microphone picked up the name as someone blurted it out. Leo Van Holst. He stepped into the aisle. Alone. Uninvited. Unapologetic. White linen shirt. Rolled sleeves. No sunglasses. Just Leo, raw, unguarded, fully exposed. He climbed the steps to the stage like it was built for him. The panel moderator stammered. "Sir, this is a closed session, and we're not currently taking audience." "I'm not the audience," he said into the mic. "I'm the apology." Gasps. Laughter. Phones rose like a sea of blinking stars. And Isabella. She stood. Frozen. "Isabella," he said, voice steady, "I'm not here to embarrass you." "A little late for that," she said quietly, lips twitching. He smiled. "I came because I got everything wrong. Because I walked away when I should have fought. Because I let someone else tell our story, and I believed her." "Leo," her voice cracked. But he wasn't done. "You said once that I was afraid of being seen. You were right. But the truth is, you didn't just see me. You understood me. And I destroyed that with suspicion. With pride. And now." He stepped forward. "Now I want to give you everything I took away." He turned to the audience, still stunned. "For the record, the cipher is brilliant. Brave. It's not a smear campaign. It's a love letter disguised as literature. And to the publisher who mocked it," he said, glancing at the press row, "I'm buying them." More gasps. "Effective this week, I'm acquiring Elman Press. I've already signed the papers. And I'm handing editorial control of the cipher, and their entire imprint, to Isabella Walker." A pause. "She can run it. Rewrite it. Or burn it to the ground." The moderator dropped her pen. Two panelists started clapping. The rest followed. A standing ovation began to build. But Isabella was still standing still. Tears in her eyes. And then Leo turned back to her, softer now. "I didn't come to win. I came to mean it." He stepped forward. "One final beat. So if you're still writing, I'd like to be the next chapter. If you'll have me." Silence. And then, she kissed him. Right there on stage. No hesitation. No permission asked. She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him like it was the only thing keeping her breathing. The tent erupted. The literary world had their new favorite power couple. But they didn't care. Because in that moment, it wasn't a publicity stunt. It wasn't a billionaire buying forgiveness. It was two flawed, brilliant people finally writing the truth, together. Chapter 24, The Second Kiss. The kiss on stage was perfect. Too perfect. The kind that should have ended with credits and music and happily ever after. But for Isabella Walker, it felt like the start of a storm. Because the moment her lips left his, the moment her body remembered the entire world was watching, cheering, snapping photos, whispering, she panicked. Not because she didn't love him, but because she did. She stepped back, breathless. Leo's hands hovered near her waist, gentle, not gripping. Isabella. She looked at him. Eyes wide. Shining. Terrified. I can't, she whispered. Not here. Not like this. And then she turned and ran. Out of the tent. Down the stone steps. Barefoot. Fast. The jungle trail behind the venue opened before her like muscle memory. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she needed air. Needed space. Needed to feel anything that wasn't applause or judgment or pressure. And Leo. He didn't hesitate. He chased her. Through banyan branches and hanging vines, past incense smoke and stone altars, until the resort's border blurred and the jungle reclaimed the land. Isabella. No answer. Just the sound of her breath. The slap of her feet on mossy stone. He followed until she broke into a clearing. And stopped. The flower field. Wide. Wild. A sea of red hibiscus and gold helicania and deep violet orchids. Sunlight poured through the canopy above in molten streaks. The air shimmered with heat and tension. She stood in the center of it all, chest rising and falling, hair wild around her shoulders, arms crossed tight like she was holding herself together with invisible stitches. He approached slowly. You didn't have to run. I know. But you did. She turned to face him. I love you, she said suddenly. Desperately. But I'm scared it's all happening again. That I'll wake up tomorrow and you'll change your mind. That it's another dream you bought instead of earned. Leo stepped into the light. No shadows. No sunglasses. No armor. You think this is easy for me? It should be. Then you don't know what it costs me to stay. A pause. Then softer, but I'm here. Chasing you. In the jungle. In linen. That cracked something inside her. She let out a half sob, half laugh, one hand flying to her mouth. I don't want to be afraid, she whispered. But I've never loved someone who didn't leave. Leo stepped closer. One more inch. And then another. Then I'll be the first. He reached for her hand. She let him. And then, the second kiss. Not like the first one. Not like the kiss in the storm, or the kiss in the bath, or the kiss on the stage. This one was different. This one was earned. No tension. No performance. Just lips meeting in the gold haze of sunset, hands cradling each other like glass, like treasure, like truth. Her body melted into his. His arms wrapped around her waist. And in that field of flowers, as the sun dipped below the canopy and the world held its breath, they stayed in that kiss. Slow motion. Emotional strings. If it were a movie, this would be the part where violins swelled and rose petals floated past the camera lens. But in real life, it was better. Because no one else was there. Just them. And the silence of everything finally being right. Chapter 25, The Epilogue. The Villa of Love. 1 year later, Bali. The wind carried the scent of orchids and sea salt. It danced lazily through the open glass doors of Villa 9, ruffling white linen curtains, brushing over half-drunk champagne glasses, and gently flipping the edge of an open manuscript on the coffee table. On the last page, in elegant handwriting, The Cipher, by Isabella Van Holst. And yes, the Van Holst was new. Outside, laughter echoed. On the sun-drenched terrace, under a canopy of flowering bougainvillea, Isabella stood barefoot in a silk robe, sipping coconut water and smiling lazily at the ocean. Her long hair tumbled down her back in effortless waves. On her left hand, a ring. Emerald cut. Understated. Elegant. Hers. A soft thump behind her. She turned, and grinned. Leo. Your husband, if we're being formal. Leo stepped outside, shirtless, sun-kissed, and finally at peace. In one hand, a breakfast tray with banana pancakes. In the other, a folded newspaper. He handed it to her, tapping the front page. Isabella Van Holst hits #1 for 18th consecutive week. The Cipher to be adapted for Netflix. She blinked. Laughed. That still feels fake. That's how you know it's real, he said, leaning in to kiss her shoulder. The best things always do. Their life was simple now. And spectacular. Gone were the parties, the yacht, the press scandals. Gone were the isolation walls Leo had once hidden behind. Now he split his time between Bali, publishing projects, and her. He built her a second studio, this time by the cliff's edge. He helped local kids learn to code twice a week. He was still a billionaire, but not the bad boy headline version. He was hers. And he was home. The scandal. A distant memory. Astrid's lies had been exposed in a legal deposition 6 months earlier. Her PR firm collapsed. Her public image, once flawless, now barely registered as a footnote. Leo's statement, equal parts savage and poetic, had gone viral. She built a fiction to destroy someone who was brave enough to tell the truth. But Leo never gloated. Because his real victory was waking up next to Isabella every morning. That evening, they hosted a party at the villa. Close friends. Fellow writers. A few loyal tech weirdos Leo still couldn't shake. Fireworks were scheduled. Champagne chilled in silver buckets. Fairy lights glowed above the patio like captured stars. As the music slowed and the jungle shimmered in the moonlight, Leo took her hand and led her onto the lawn. Dance with me, Mrs. Van Holst. I thought you didn't dance. You thought wrong. They twirled barefoot through the grass, wine-drunk and ridiculous, spinning until the world blurred around them. Then, as the music quieted and the fireworks started exploding in a slow-motion blaze of gold and white above the trees, Leo leaned in, pressed his lips against her ear, and whispered, "Trapped with you was the best thing that ever happened to me." She kissed him. Fireworks bursting above them. Champagne fizzing. The villa glowing in candlelight. And the jungle alive with music and heat and forgiveness. The camera zoomed out, past the veranda, past the garden, past the ocean view. until they were two tiny figures in a perfect corner of paradise. Still dancing. Still laughing. Still completely, unapologetically in love.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and wild theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and steamy romance, the next story is always one scandal away.